Hello and welcome to the Sports Gazette's YouTube channel, where we're here celebrating Ireland on St. Patrick's Day. My name is Kieran Roy and we'll be discussing all of the sporting events coming up this weekend, joined by some special guests. Can Ireland complete the Grand Slam, facing off against England, who are coming off the back of a drubbing against France? The second Formula One Grand Prix race of the season kicks off on Sunday, but can anyone stop a Red Bull 1-2 finish? And Leon Edwards defends his welterweight title against Kamaru Usman in a trilogy bout at the O2 Arena. But will the Brit be able to hold on to his crown in front of an adoring British audience? But to start, Irish football. And with the Women's World Cup in Australia and New Zealand just a few months away, we take a look at how the Ireland women's side qualified for their first ever World Cup. Joining us to discuss how they did it, Sports Gazette journalist and women's football writer Adriana Verens. So, Adriana, you recently published a piece about how Ireland's women's qualification to the World Cup in the summer. Tell us about how the journey that Ireland has gone on to progress to this tournament.
Oh, Kieran, thanks for having me. Ireland came in second in the group for the qualification. Then this means they moved on to the playoffs, where they went against Scotland and won against them 1-0. In a very dramatic way, because Scotland received a penalty, but they missed it, and then Amber Barrett, who was substituted some minutes earlier, put in the goal for Ireland, and was obviously a very big thing for the country.
Have they ever come close to qualifying for the World Cup before?
Not really. They came in third in the group stage, but have not made it to the playoffs yet. But in the junior teams, they have made it to the semi-finals and quarter-finals for the Euros.
And what kind of expectations can we have of Ireland coming into the World Cup?
Well, I think first of all, they just want to have fun and enjoy their first ever World Cup, and obviously with them facing Australia in the first game, in a very big stadium with a capacity of 82,000 people. I think it will be a great way to kick off their journey, and yes.
And is there any chance they can make a long run in the competition?
I mean, I would say never, but I think it's not very likely that they make it very far, because they go against Australia, they go against Olympic gold medalists Canada and also Nigeria, so I think it will be a great journey for them, but I don't think they make it past the group stage.
Well, thank you very, very much, Adriana, for joining us to talk about this historic moment in women's football in Ireland. Next, we'll talk about rugby, as Ireland face off against a struggling England side who are devoid of confidence. Joining me now is rugby writer James Price. James, Ireland are looking to win their first Grand Slam since 2018. How do you think the Irish squad is feeling?
I think they're feeling pretty good. They have probably had the most comprehensive run in the Six Nations that we've seen in years, in terms of the way that they've gone around and won those games. They have won all those games pretty convincingly as well, and we haven't seen that in a long time. This Irish team feels consistent, and it feels like this is a dynasty that's properly building. It's not just a flash in the pan. And obviously they're playing England, and last week England didn't have the best time down at Twickenham. They got absolutely hammered by a French team on absolutely top form. So I think they couldn't really be feeling much better about this weekend. Obviously it's St. Patrick's Day as well. All the momentum's with them, Kieran.
And how has the battle between Andy and Owen Farrell, father and son, developed since Andy's appointment as Ireland coach, while his son captains England?
It's interesting because 2019 was the year when England were at their peak. That's when they went to the World Cup final. Didn't quite manage to win that World Cup, unfortunately, but England were playing incredibly at that time. And now it's all switched. Ireland are the best team in the world. England are, on a downwards trajectory at the moment, if maybe flat at best. They're definitely not on an upwards trajectory. So yeah, it's an interesting dynamic between those two, but one's going up, one's going down.
I mean, you mentioned how poor England have been. How do you think the mood in their camp is following that 53-10 defeat to France?
It's difficult to tell because, it's still a new coach. Steve Borthwick only came in and has had, barely any time to really change and put his impact on that squad that he wants to. So I think maybe within the camp, I think the mood will probably be brighter perhaps than it actually is outside. A lot of the fans have a tendency to hit the panic button. and to think that maybe all things are lost. But that's not true. England have changed up the squad a little bit this week. They've gone with Manitou Alangi, back to the chosen one in Manitou Alangi in the centres. He's always been the guy who, if he's fit, he will be picked. Now, at the start of the Six Nations, he was available, and for the first time really in his whole England career, he wasn't picked. He was left on the sidelines, and Ollie Lawrence took that shirt in the centres. And now he's here to prove his point, and he's had a pretty good record against Ireland. I wrote a piece earlier for the Sports Gazette today. He's played 6 games against Ireland and he's never lost. And hopefully he'll continue that position and that record. But, you know, time will tell, time will tell.
Well, that sounds slightly promising from an England perspective. And you mentioned that there's a new manager, obviously. But so does that mean that this is simply a one-off result for England, the result against France, or are there deeper issues inside the England team?
Both are true. However, it's not as doomsday as some might think. I think it's true that that was a one-off result. I think that is the worst result that England have ever had at Twickenham. So in that sense, it is a flash-in-the-pan problem to have a defeat that bad. England were bad on the same day that France hit absolutely every note on the hymn sheet. You know, they couldn't have really played much better. I mean, when you've got the world's best player in the world, Antoine Dupont, hitting a 50-22 with his wrong foot, you know, you sort of just throw your hands up and go, what the hell are we supposed to do? Are there deeper problems in English rugby? Unfortunately, there's a lot of problems in rugby at the moment, Kieran. It's been a bit of an exhausting couple of months covering the sport. But the deeper problems really lie in that we don't really have this emerging age group, really. You've got the likes of Owen Farrell, you've got the likes of Manitou Alangi, who are sort of on their way out, but we haven't quite had those people come and take that place yet. I think we are seeing that transition at the moment. We saw that in Ireland. That's still a bit of a problem that they've got to deal with as well. And, you know, there's fundamental funding issues at the club games. We don't have enough time to go into all that stuff. But, you know, when it rolls around to the World Cup, England are going to be looking good.
And do you think there's any chance for England, or is this simply going to be an Ireland walkover?
It's going to be closer than you think. I think you know, the occasion's big for Ireland. This is the first chance they've ever had to win a Grand Slam at home in Dublin on St Paddy's weekend. That is a huge thing for them. I don't think it's going to be a walkover, but you know, Ireland are going to be scoring 30 points. They have done in the last 2 games against England. That's going to be happening. It just depends how many we score. And I think, you know, if you want a score prediction, I'm going to go about 35-15, I reckon. Okay.
And lastly, just a quick note on the Women's Six Nations, which starts this weekend. Who do you have as favourites coming into the tournament?
Super exciting. Yeah, it starts next weekend after this one. But yeah, no, that's right. England, obviously, at the end of last year, they went to a World Cup final and they lost it by the barest of margins. And given the fact that they had a red card early on in the game, they are the front runners and always have been, always will be in this Women's Six Nations. But you know, Wales performed pretty well in the Six Nations as well, and so did France. France got to a semi-final against New Zealand, and they again lost it by the barest of margins. If it wasn't for a conversion that missed the post by a couple of metres, they would have been in their first ever World Cup final. So really, it's all building towards the England versus France game at Twickenham, which is the first ever standalone England women's game at Twickenham. It's going to be an absolute brilliant event, and hopefully that will be the day that England clinch that title.
Well, thank you very much, James, for joining us. And next, we'll be discussing Formula One. And can anyone stop Max Verstappen? Joining us for this part, we have Sports Gazette Motorsport writer Anna Rodriguez. Anna, before we start, you wrote a piece today talking about the situation going on at Ferrari. Can you explain that some more?
Well, what I want to transmit is if you want to have a drivers' world champion, you need to have a number 1 driver and a number 2 driver. That is a problem that they are facing right now with many other teams, and they don't have a number 1 driver. And Ferrari needs a number 1, either Leclerc or either Sainz, but they need to settle this down. They cannot have 2 drivers fighting each other in the track. They should be fighting the Red Bulls of the Aston Martins, not between them.
Well, the Formula One season kicked off last week in Bahrain. Can you tell us what happened?
Well, as it was maybe expected, Max Verstappen won, followed by his teammate Checo Perez, and then the surprise was the Aston Martin of Fernando Alonso that finished 3rd, and he joined the podium. He looks really good. Both Aston Martins look really good. The Mercedes don't look bad. What it looks really bad right now is Ferrari, and of course McLaren, that they are at the bottom of it, when we were expecting mid-table, top, fighting for some positions on podiums.
So is Ferrari's disappointing performance a surprise to you?
maybe not the performance of the drivers, really good drivers, but the car. There's some issues going with the car, the power units fail, Leclerc car has to be retired, he's faced a grid penalty this weekend, we will see how that goes.
And the second stage, as you mentioned, of the Formula One commences in Saudi Arabia this weekend. Will this just be more Red Bull dominance?
Well, the free practice, the first one finish, Red Bull on top, followed by both Aston Martins, then come the Mercedes, and we see the first Ferrari of Sainz in 7th. They have been changing power unit components in both cars. Also, the McLaren have been changing of Lando Norris. So we will see. It doesn't look good. Ferrari doesn't look good. Red Bull looks really, really good. 1.129 he made this morning. So we'll see. It's early to know, but the Aston Martins also look really powerful here.
And if you're going to make a prediction, would you say that Max Verstappen is going to run away with it?
I would say so. I think Max will run away with it. I don't know. I think the fight right now is with maybe Checo and Fernando. I think there's a very powerful fight there. Also, his teammate looks really good, Fernando's teammate, so it's Lance Stroll. So we'll see. But the fight is among Checo and Fernando, I would say.
Well, some great things to look out for there. And thank you, Anna, for joining us. In the final part of the show, we'll be discussing UFC. And can Leon Edwards blow the roof off the O2 Arena when he defends his UFC title this Saturday? Joining us now is MMA writer Alex Reed. Alex, this is a trilogy bout between Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman. Tell us what happened in the previous meeting between the two fighters.
Well, it was one of the most shocking knockouts in the history of MMA, to be honest, Kieran. Leon Edwards won the welterweight title by knocking out Kamaru Usman with a big head kick right at the end of the 5th round. Usman was winning the fight for the majority of it. He won 3 rounds against Leon's 1. Leon won the first round and then sort of fell away from it in the rest of the fight, but it just came out of nowhere. Even the commentators are saying, oh, he looks like he's resigning to losing a decision, but then he just brought out one of the best kicks I've ever seen. It was amazing.
So it sounds like this is going to be a difficult fight for Edwards, but how does Leon keep hold of his title?
He has to keep the fight standing. If he goes to the ground with Usman, I mean, Usman's an ex-Olympic wrestler. He's just not going to get anything from there. In the previous fight, Edwards did manage to stay on his feet and defend takedowns, unlike anyone else has against Usman. And he actually took Usman down, and he's the only person to ever do that in the UFC. But I can't see Edwards winning if the fight goes to the mats. If Edwards stays up, however, I mean, we've seen him knock Usman out, so anything could happen.
You say anything could happen, but who do you think takes home the crown?
My heart says Edwards, but my head says Usman. I can't see a way that Edwards stays on his feet for so long, but I mean, Edwards has shown he can do it, and he's the only person who has done it in the last few years, so yeah, I think Usman's going to win.
And are there any other fights you're looking forward to on the card?
The co-main is massive. Justin Gaethje's fighting Rafael Fiziev. Both of those guys are going to absolutely go ham for 3 5-minute rounds, and yeah, it's going to be massive. There's definitely going to be a knockout in that fight.
Good. Well, I look forward to it, and thank you very much, Alex, for joining us. And that's all the time we have on the Sports Gazette today. But thank you to all our guests for joining us, and thank you for watching. And we will catch you next time on the Sports Gazette YouTube channel. Thank you very much.